When a head coach of an NFL team can't bring himself to say his own quarterback's name, something's broken. Kevin Stefanski's awkward sidestep around Shedeur Sanders' name during a live interview wasn't just uncomfortable, it was telling. As critics pointed out, the refusal hinted at something more troubling, a growing disconnect between Stefanski and the younger talent that could revive the Browns' stagnant offense. In a league where leadership must evolve or get left behind, Stefanski's on-air moment painted a picture of a coach increasingly out of step with his own roster.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This wasn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom of Cleveland's broader issues. Stefanski's unwillingness to acknowledge Sanders fits a larger pattern of stubborn leadership, where innovation and potential take a back seat to control and ego. While other franchises adapt and build around rising stars, the Browns remain stuck in a loop of mediocrity, fueled by outdated strategies and an unwillingness to change course. For Sanders to thrive, and for the team to move forward, those internal roadblocks have to go. Kevin Stefanski didn't fumble a play. He didn't mismanage a timeout. He didn't blow a challenge flag. What he fumbled live on national TV was something much more basic. A name, Shedeur Sanders. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns was asked a straightforward question during a televised interview. And instead of giving an answer, instead of offering support for the young quarterback many believed could breathe life into Cleveland's lifeless offense, Stefanski opted for a stiff, awkward non-response. He called Sanders our second-string quarterback. That's it. No name, no credit, no vision. Just a label, cold, dismissive, and undeniably intentional. That clip exploded, not because it was some loud, shocking outburst, but because it was subtle and uncomfortable, and it said so much by saying so little. Stefanski didn't just sidestep Sanders' name. He sidestepped accountability, momentum, and any sense of connection to the most talked-about rookie on the roster. And fans? They clocked it immediately. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a message. And it came off loud and clear. Shedeur Sanders is not part of Stefanski's plan. And that's where this whole thing really takes a turn. Because you can't talk about this moment without putting it in the context of the Browns' current situation. The team is struggling. The offense is flat. The play calling has been painfully predictable. The locker room? Frustrated. The fan base? Running out of patience. And amid all that, the coach decides to not acknowledge the one guy who might actually be able to turn things around. That's not just poor communication. That's bad leadership. People have started asking the obvious question, what's really going on behind the scenes? Because this doesn't just look like an awkward soundbite. It looks like control issues. It looks like ego. It looks like a coach afraid that a rookie might outperform a plan he's clinging to like a lifeline. Stefanski's been under the microscope before. Conservative play calling, questionable rotations, inconsistent game management. But this latest move? It suggests something deeper. A resistance to change so firm that he'd rather risk the team's trajectory than risk being overshadowed. Because that's what Sanders represents. Not just talent, but change. Energy. Visibility. Possibility. And for a coach operating in survival mode, that can feel threatening. That awkward moment on live TV wasn't just Stefanski freezing. It was Stefanski drawing a line. And now the pressure is on everyone to respond. Let's not forget, Sanders didn't ask for any of this drama. He's been quiet, professional, focused. He hasn't pushed back. He hasn't fed the fire. He's done exactly what rookies are told to do. Stay ready and wait. And now, he's being used as a political pawn in a coaching crisis he didn't create. That silence, that composure, it says a lot about who Shedeur is. It also makes the way he's being treated even more glaring. While the Browns continue to sputter on offense, Sanders remains benched. Benched while the starter struggles and the coach clings to a system that's been picked apart by opposing defenses week after week. The fans have had enough. The analysts are calling it out. And the locker room? You better believe they're watching how all of this plays out. This isn't a quarterback controversy. This is a leadership disaster. It's one thing to believe in your system. It's another to be so stubborn that you refuse to acknowledge reality. And right now, the reality is this. The Browns are not progressing. The offense is not producing. And Stefanski, rather than adapt, is choosing to ignore the most obvious tool at his disposal. It's not about whether Sanders is the long-term answer. It's about why he's being kept out of the conversation entirely. And it's starting to look like the reason has nothing to do with football and everything to do with pride. You don't have to be inside the building to feel the disconnect. The energy around this team has shifted. Fans are exhausted. Every press conference sounds the same. Every game looks like the last. And the decision-making? It's stuck in neutral. When Sanders was drafted, there was excitement, hope. Maybe, finally, the Browns had found someone with the potential to change the tone. But instead of building that future, the coaching staff is actively freezing it out. That refusal to say his name was just the latest confirmation. And the impact goes beyond one player. It sends a message to the entire roster. You could do everything right, but if the coach feels threatened, you'll be left behind. That kind of atmosphere doesn't build trust. It drains it. And in a league like the NFL, where every week is a battle, that's a death sentence. This is a team stuck in a loop. Outdated play calling, lack of creativity, and now, a coach who can't even perform the basic function of backing his own players in public. It's the kind of behavior that destroys morale from the top down. And the worst part? This could all be avoided. Stefanski didn't have to hand Sanders the starting job. He didn't even have to make a bold declaration. All he had to do was show respect. All he had to do was say the man's name. Instead, he gave us a moment that now defines a Brown season. A quiet moment that exposed loud truths. And now we're all watching to see what happens next. Will leadership finally confront what's clearly broken? Or will they continue pretending that everything is under control while the team crumbles under the weight of their own ego? The Browns have a chance to turn the page. Not next season. Not in 5 weeks. Now. But it's going to take more than a quarterback switch. It's going to take humility, transparency, and leadership that's willing to put the team ahead of pride. And right now, that doesn't look like Kevin Stefanski. The fans deserve better. The players deserve better. And Shedeur Sanders, who's handled this entire saga with professionalism and poise, deserve better. So where does this go from here? That depends on whether the front office is willing to confront what everyone else already sees. Whether they can push past the PR spin, the vague coach speak, and the political posturing. Whether they're finally ready to let go of a leadership model that's clearly not working. There's still time. But not much. Every week Sanders stays on the bench. Every awkward interview. Every offensive meltdown adds a fire. And eventually, that fire consumes everything. Stefanski doesn't just risk losing games. He risks losing the locker room, the fans, and any credibility he has left. And it all started with a name he wouldn't say. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Stefanski crossed a line with how he handled the interview? Is Sanders being disrespected? Or is this all part of some larger plan no one understands? Should the Browns pull the trigger and make a change right now? Smash that like button if you're tired of leadership hiding behind excuses. Hit subscribe if you want to keep following this story as it unfolds. And share this with someone who's still holding out hope that Cleveland can get this right before it's too late. Because this wasn't just a fumbled interview. This was a warning shot. And the clock is ticking. It's not often that a single sentence, or a lack of one, can unravel an entire franchise's narrative. But that's exactly what happened when Kevin Stefanski refused to say Shedeur Sanders' name on live TV. It wasn't a heated exchange. No microphones were thrown, no tempers flared, and yet, somehow, it became the most revealing and damning moment of the Brown season. Because when a head coach, facing mounting pressure, avoids acknowledging the very player who could represent a way out of offensive purgatory, the silence speaks volumes. That one clip sentence, "He's our second-string quarterback," might as well have been a press release. I'm not ready to give this kid a shot, and I don't want to talk about why. Let's be clear, this wasn't about mispronunciation. It wasn't about nerves or a slip of the tongue. It was deliberate, a calculated move that felt less like leadership and more like gatekeeping. And the backlash? Immediate. Fans knew what they were watching. Analysts caught the subtext. And now the entire league is side-eyeing the Browns, asking the same question. What is Kevin Stefanski so afraid of? Because fear is exactly what this looks like. Not fear of failure. Cleveland's had plenty of that. No, this is fear of losing control. Fear that Shedeur Sanders could walk in, energize the offense, win over the locker room, and prove that the old ways, Stefanski's ways, are outdated. And here's the real kicker. Sanders hasn't said a word. He's kept his head down, avoided the noise, and done everything right. He's been the professional, the adult, the one putting team before ego. While the head coach plays politics, Sanders waits. Silently, patiently, watching the offense stall, watching game plans collapse, watching his name become taboo. What message does that send? To the team? To the fans? To every player grinding for a shot? That in Cleveland, merit doesn't matter. Results don't matter. Growth doesn't matter. Only the hierarchy matters. And that's a problem. Because this team isn't just struggling on paper. It's unraveling in spirit. The offense has no pulse. The locker room looks frustrated. The game plans are being picked apart before halftime. And while all this unfolds, the one player who might actually spark something isn't even allowed into the conversation. This isn't just poor coaching. This is organizational malpractice. And it's not new. Stefanski's pattern has been clear for a while now. Stick with what's comfortable. Keep the same predictable playbook. Ride or die with underperforming starters. Avoid the spotlight when things go wrong. And now, refuse to acknowledge a rising star simply because his presence might shift the balance of power. That's not how you build a winning franchise. That's how you waste one. Let's break it down even further. The Browns' offense has been consistently anemic. The play calling? Repetitive. Vanilla. Entirely predictable. Opposing teams aren't getting beat. They're barely being tested. Week after week, fans are watching 3-and-outs, stalled red zone drives, and a lack of urgency that borders on apathy. It's not just that the Browns are losing. It's how they're losing. Slowly. Painfully. With no signs of adjustment. And when adjustment means simply acknowledging a young quarterback's presence, and that's still too much, you've got a leadership crisis. What makes this even worse is the timing. The league is shifting. Young quarterbacks are thriving across the NFL. Teams are adapting, modernizing, leaning into risk and creativity. Meanwhile, Cleveland is stuck watching a head coach who's more interested in maintaining order than creating solutions. Shedeur Sanders might not be the full answer, but he's an answer. And in a season where the current system is failing on every level, how do you justify ignoring every opportunity for change? You can't. Not logically. Not in good faith. And fans know it. That's why this has become the conversation. It's not about one interview. It's about a culture that punishes initiative and hides behind outdated philosophies. It's about a coaching staff that sees player potential as a threat, not a resource. It's about how ego, not execution, has become the Browns' biggest obstacle. And for Shedeur Sanders, this isn't just about playing time. It's about respect. The way Stefanski handled that interview sent a very clear message. Sanders' contributions don't matter. His presence isn't worth mentioning. His potential isn't part of the plan. And if that's what's being said in public, you can only imagine what's being said behind closed doors. So where does this go from here? Because status quo is an option. Not anymore. Not when the dysfunction is this public. Not when fans are openly calling for change. Not just in personnel, but in mindset. Not when the face of your future is being erased by the very person supposed to develop him. There are only two paths left. The Browns stick with Stefanski, continue to suppress change, and ride this season into another forgettable finish. Maybe they win a few more games. Maybe they scrape together enough wins to claim progress. But deep down, everyone knows what's really happening. Another year lost. Another quarterback wasted. Another opportunity buried under fear and pride. Or two, they course correct. They stop pretending this is about readiness or strategy. They stop spinning narratives and start listening. To the fans, to the players, to reality playing out every Sunday. They bring Sanders into the picture. Not as a PR move, not as a gimmick, but as a legitimate pivot toward the future. Because the longer this drags out, the more damage is done, not just to Sanders' development, but to the entire culture. Players are watching how this is handled. So are agents. So are future draft picks. And if the message Cleveland continues to send is, we don't support young talent unless they stay in their lane, the long-term consequences will be brutal. This moment could have been so simple. A name, a nod, a coach showing even a shred of confidence in his young quarterback. Instead, we got an awkward dodge that turned into a PR firestorm and a leadership crisis in full view. And now, Stefanski's silence is speaking louder than any of his game plans. So what happens next? That's on Cleveland's front office. That's on ownership. That's on the coaching staff. But one thing's for sure, the fans have made up their minds. The time for vague answers and passive leadership is over. The Browns don't just need a spark. They need a shift. And Shedeur Sanders? He's ready. He's been ready. He's just waiting for someone in power to stop pretending he isn't. The truth is, the Cleveland Browns didn't just embarrass themselves in a press conference. They exposed the exact reason they continue to circle the drain year after year. And it wasn't because of a blown play or a fourth-quarter collapse. It was because their head coach, the supposed leader of the locker room, couldn't say the name Shedeur Sanders on live television. Let that sink in. In a league built on communication, leadership, and trust, Kevin Stefanski went in front of cameras and gave the coldest, most calculated snub possible to his own quarterback, a young player the fans are begging to see, a guy who might actually salvage an offense that's been dragging itself down the field like it's stuck in wet cement. Instead of backing him, Stefanski erased him, not in private, not behind closed doors, publicly. And it's that silence, that intentional omission, that blew the lid off what's really happening in Cleveland. This wasn't some harmless coaching strategy or a misunderstood media moment. This was a display of power, a subtle, smug reminder that Stefanski is still in control, even if that control is destroying the team from the inside out. Let's be honest, no one's buying the coach knows best narrative anymore. The Browns' offense is stale. It's flatlining. The playbook hasn't evolved, the execution is predictable, and the results? Embarrassing. This is a team stuck in a loop of conservative play calling, outdated philosophies, and leadership so risk-averse it's borderline paralyzed. And in the middle of all that dysfunction is Shedeur Sanders, silent, waiting, and completely ready. But instead of giving the kid a shot, Stefanski is more concerned with preserving the system he built, one that clearly isn't working. The ego it takes to sideline someone with Sanders' upside just to maintain control, that's not confidence. That's insecurity in a headset. You've got a fan base that's been through everything. Injuries, roster churn, locker room drama, coaching carousel after coaching carousel. And when they finally get a quarterback with charisma, vision, and the kind of leadership that can change the temperature of a franchise, what does their head coach do? He refuses to say his name. How do you come back from that? Because that wasn't just about Sanders. That was about every young player in that locker room, watching how leadership treats potential. It was about sending a message, whether Stefanski meant to or not. If you shine too bright, we'll dim your light. If you're not part of the plan, you're not part of the story. That's not development. That's suppression. That's the kind of culture that eats itself from the inside out. The Browns aren't losing because they lack talent. They're losing because they're being led by someone who doesn't want to be challenged. A coach who would rather slow walk this team through another forgettable season than admit his system needs a jolt. And Sanders? He is that jolt. He's not just some rookie riding hype. He has a resume. He has the temperament. He has the instincts. And he has the support from fans, from players, from the future of this franchise. And yet, week after week, the Browns act like he doesn't exist. This isn't just caution anymore. This is willful neglect. Let's not forget that Cleveland didn't stumble into this situation. This team actively put itself here. They drafted Sanders. They promoted his potential. They gave fans a glimpse of something new. Then, when things started to go south, when the system began to break down, they closed the door on the very change they promised. And now, they're pretending like the answer isn't sitting on the bench, like the problem is injuries, or timing, or circumstances, when really, the problem is leadership that refuses to evolve. At this point, Kevin Stefanski isn't just failing to develop a quarterback. He's failing to manage a crisis of his own making. Every coach in the NFL knows how quickly the narrative can shift. One decision can define your legacy. And in a year where the Browns needed urgency, flexibility, and vision, Stefanski gave them a blank stare and a clipped answer that told us everything we needed to know. He doesn't trust the future. He fears it. And you can't build a team around fear. You build it around belief. In your players. In your adaptability. In your ability to grow. But when a coach can't even say a player's name because it might upset the balance of power, the entire foundation starts to crack. So here we are, watching a team with talent rot in real time. Watching a fan base beg for change while leadership doubles down on mediocrity. Watching a head coach go out of his way to avoid saying the name of the one player who might actually give this team a reason to fight again. And for what? Control? Image? Job security? Whatever the reason, it's not working. The numbers don't lie. The locker room energy doesn't lie. The fans, absolutely fed up and furious, definitely aren't lying. And the longer this goes on, the more this isn't just about one interview or one decision. It becomes a defining story of the season. The moment where the Browns chose pride over progress, silence over support, stagnation over evolution. The path forward is clear. It's been clear. Start listening to your players. Start respecting your talent. Start saying the names of the people who might actually move this team forward. Stop hiding behind coach speak and calculated silences. Own the moment, or step aside for someone who will. Because Shedeur Sanders deserves more than a backhanded mention. He deserves a real opportunity. And so do the fans who waited too long to watch their team stop playing scared. If you're watching this unfold and thinking this could have all been avoided, you're right. This never had to be a scandal. It never had to be drama. It could have been a 5-second show of faith. A coach saying, Shedeur's doing great. We believe in him. Done. No backlash. No controversy. No firestorm. Instead, the fire's burning brighter than ever. And if you think this ends with one interview, it doesn't. This is a fracture that doesn't heal without accountability, without answers, without action. So what do you think? Has Stefanski shown his hand? Has he lost the locker room, the fans, and his grip on the future? Is Sanders being silenced by design, or just buried by fear? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let your voice be heard. Hit like if you're done watching the Browns fumble leadership like they fumble fourth-quarter leads. Subscribe if you want to keep following the real stories the NFL doesn't want to talk about. And share this with someone who knows the Browns don't have a talent problem. They have a truth problem. Because the truth is sitting on the bench. And it has a name. It's Shedeur Sanders.